Namanda, 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 Namanda. Good morning, everyone. Ohayo gozaimasu. Welcome to our Ohigan service for 2020. It's nice to have everyone here and there, and appreciate that everyone is able to connect to our service through the YouTube channels. So today's service chairperson here is Paolo, the penguin. Paolo is rare to have a Italian penguin here, and rare to have a Italian Buddhist here, but he is both. And so he's here and wearing his mask and reminding us again to be very careful out there, because we want to be protective of ourselves and our loved ones, to wear the mask. And it becomes all the more important in these smoky days, because not only are we concerned with the pandemic, the air with all the particles are very bad for all of us. And so we want to, even if we're not in company or in stores, even working alone outside, we want to wear a mask and not breathe in all the particles that we may not see but are hanging in the air. Okay? So this is also our Cato recognition weekend. Each Ohigan we honor our Cato honorees, and so special welcome to all of you who are here joining us in this service. When I think of the Cato people, you know, we look around and myself and others, gradually we are becoming the age of the Cato people who are honored, and little by little we get closer to that tier. But when I personally think about Cato, I think about beyond mom and dad. I think about grandma and grandpa, and people who were senior to me when I was very young. And I think about my grandfather, and when I was super young, you know, 3 years old or so, he would seem so tall, and we wouldn't see him so often, so I'd be afraid of him. And he would be bent over and look like 5 feet tall just because he's bent over from working so hard as a farmer. And then when he would stretch his body, he would be much closer to 6 feet tall. That much difference that he was bent over from all the hard work. And certainly each of us has, you know, our relatives that we think about and consider when we think about the Cato honorees, you know, mom and dad, certainly, but grandma, grandpa, and these people, not just to honor our elders, but without them, we're not even here. Without them, we are nothing. And so through grandpa wanting one of his boys to go into the ministry, my father decided to go to Japan and study Buddhism. And because of that connection, my brother wanted to follow in dad's footsteps and went to Japan. And eventually I got over there too, and I'm in this position now today talking about Ohigan, talking about Cato, and all these reflections come to mind when I think of those that we are honoring today. So again, very special welcome to the Cato honorees. I'd like to now go into the service order. Today we're going to have the reading of the 3 treasures, and then the RaiSonMon. And I'll take my seat, we'll do the SanBuJo and the JuSeiGei. Nembutsu and Ekoku will complete the chanting portion of the service, and I'll come back here for our Dharma message. Okay, so please join me in the reading of the 3 treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the 3 treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teachings. RaiSonMon. Ninjin ukegatashi imasude ni uku. Buppo kikigatashi imasude ni kiku. Konomi konjo ni mukatte dosezumba. Sarani izure no shou ni mukatte kakonomi o dosen. Daishu moro tomo ni shishin ni sambo ni kieshi tatematsuru beshi. Mizu kara butsu ni kieshi tatematsuru. Masani negawaku wa shujou to tomo ni daido o taige shite mujoi o okosan. Mizu kara hou ni kieshi tatematsuru. Masani negawaku wa shujou to tomo ni 深く共存に入りて知恵海のごとくならん。自らそうに消えし立てまつる。まさに願わくば地上とともに大衆を通りして一切無下ならん。無常人人未明の方は百千万号にも愛をことかたし。我今検問し従事することを得たり、願わくば如来の真実義を消し立てまつらん。ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏、ナモアミダ仏、ナマンダー、ナマンダー、ナマンダー。SanBuJo, JuSeiGei. Namanda. calm meditation. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, 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 Namanda. Namanda, 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 Namanda. Good morning once again. Welcome to our Ohigan service for 2020, and we do want to acknowledge and recognize, honor all our Cato people that have been able to join our service today. So it's always a special recognition when we are able to acknowledge all that they have brought to our temple and to our lives. So I would like to, today's Hoa is a bit of a continuation from last week. And so I would like to start with this wasan. So please join me in Gassho as I read this wasan. We who aspire for Amida's fulfilled land, though we differ in outward condition and conduct, should truly receive the name of the Primal Vow and never forget it, whether waking or sleeping. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, 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 Namanda. Namo Amida Butsu. Okay, so last week we were talking about history of our tradition and starting a little bit about Shakyamuni Buddha and his seeking for the truth and for enlightenment. And when he found his awakening, he decided finally to share this with all people, and the teachings that he came to is Amida Buddha, who as Bodhisattva Dharmakara made these 48 vows to create this pure land that would welcome all people. So this new idea, an idea of the pure land to welcome all beings. And then when we come to Shindan Shonin, he brought the Nembutsu teachings to become available not only to the monks and the royalty who had the time to study, but for the peasants, the farmers, the fishermen, the merchants, and everybody. So it opened up Buddhism and the Nembutsu teachings to a wider spectrum of people. So it's including all beings, and not just in thought and idea, but to finally make this accessible to everyone. And one of the final thoughts from last week was remembering presentation by Reverend Yamada of Berkeley Higashi, and he was mentioning the Ikko Ikki revolt in Japanese history. And so when I heard about that and heard him speaking of that, I remember classes as when we were students at IBS and Murakami Sensei in particular, when he would convey things that happened in Japanese history that related to our tradition, he would make it so dramatic, and it would be like everyone would be enthralled and watching, listening, and it's like the samurai movie, Chambara movies are playing out as he's speaking. And so we're maybe listening to him and at the same time remembering certain scenes from those movies that we might have seen, a couple years ago or in our childhood. And so history that we're not so familiar with here in America, but things that played out in Japan. And this Ikko Ikki portion is a reflection of the Nembutsu teachings growing and becoming so popular that it became available to many, many, many people. And just by sheer numbers, they became a force to be reckoned with. So the people in power felt threatened by all these Jodo Shinshu followers. And it's hard to comprehend, hard to imagine thinking of that as we go to, in one sense, we have a lot of temples here in America, and particularly in California, but still looked upon as a small religion, a minority religion. But to imagine the power of all these people, Jodo Shinshu followers, and their connections rising up and saying, because of the Nembutsu teachings, they are no less than anyone else, that they have access to these teachings, they have access to attaining awakening, the Pure Land. And so they all joined together and became this force to fight with those people in power. So kind of an uprising, and the people in power became very concerned, very scared of this power, and how do we deal with them? How do we, and battles ensued, okay? And so these are people from this tradition, that is part of our tradition, okay? So from there, in Japan, these are the people who became the people who came to America. People said coming to Hawaii initially, there were like 158 contract workers that came from Japan and to go to Hawaii to work in the sugar fields and such. And because they were treated like slave labor, some of them said forget it, and they went home, and others persevered and continued. And from that small beginning, more and more people from Japan came, and over the next 4 decades, 40 years, 500,000 people came from Japan. 500,000 people came from Japan to the Americas. And so all these people, and 99% of them were Buddhist. Okay? Not the majority were Buddhist, not 90% were Buddhist, 99% Buddhist. And that's hard to comprehend. It's very hard to comprehend. And so for this reason, our temples grew and became strong. People that came to America, most of them came from areas in Japan that were strong in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. So our relatives from 4, 5, 6, 10, 15 generations have been Jodo Shinshu Buddhists coming here to America to settle. And some of them changed to Christianity. There's a huge effort to change the people that came from Japan to become Christian, to become more American. And so a lot of people thought that might be an easier way to assimilate into this society. And for that reason, they became Christian. And not because preference of one teaching over another, but just to make it easier on themselves and their families. And so I have nothing against Christianity, but to change because of political and social pressure, I think that is sad. Kawaiso for those people who left generations of tradition to feel safer and more comfortable in the world that they had come to. So this is part of our overall history in coming from Issei pioneers coming to America, Buddhist pioneers coming to America. And all this is part of our traditions, part of our history that we inherit. Then, now, as we come to look at all the social unrest today, a lot of it is described as systemic racism. But beyond racism, it's just people in positions of power who want to maintain positions of power and limiting and restricting those who are of a different religion, those of a different culture, those of a different color. And so this has happened just like the caste system in India. Shindan Shonin's royalty who ran the efforts of Buddhism and then opening up to all people in Japan, those people coming here. The same kind of process has continued and does continue. Now they talk about specific races and things like this, but it can also be viewed as those abuse from people in power towards people who are not quite there. And so we see this played out. And so as we look at this, as we look at our history as Buddhists, as Japanese coming to America, we need to be able to, we should be able to reflect upon our own family path. As Japanese Americans, as Buddhists, whatever our colors are today, there's so many mixtures, but we are all part of this process that continues and continues. So, you know, do we become part of those in power because we've worked at it and we've earned it and now we have that position? Or are we recognizing all the things that Grandma and Grandpa went through and generations and generations before that in Japan, in China, in India? So many people wanted to open things to become more equitable, more fair, more loving kindness that we talk about towards our fellow human beings. So as we look at our own path today, we are Jodo Shinshu, Pure Land Buddhists, and this Pure Land is a place that would welcome all beings, not a specific place that we hope to get to when we die, but our aspiration of how this world, how this life can be, our aspiration of how we can all help each other along and to share in something that is fair and equitable in so many ways. And so towards that, we work with each other, helping each other along and recognizing things that can be placed in a better perspective so we can move away from this abusive power and man's inhumanity to man that continues and continues. Our aim and our goal as Buddhists, as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, is to follow this same tradition that has been handed to us and to continue, see that perspective and continue that perspective. So I think this is very important to be able to see in these days, and I hope we can all reflect upon that. So please join me again as I reread this wasan. Join me. We who aspire for Amida's fulfilled land, though we differ in outward condition and conduct, should truly receive the name of the primal vow and never forget it, whether waking or sleeping. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, 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 Namanda. Thank you again for honoring together our Cato honorees and for joining us for this Ohigan service for this year. Really appreciate everyone tuning in to be with us today. Thank you very much. Please come up in Oshoko here and at your homes. We'll light the incense in preparation, and you can do so at your own homes as well. Thank you.